journalists, musicians, actors. We have a very special lineup for you here now with Diego Luna and Camilo Lara. Big round of applause. And I'm also really delighted to welcome Crispin Somerville, and Crispin is the genius behind today's festival. Tell you a little bit about Crispin before he introduces Diego and Camilo. He lived in Mexico for quite a while, where he ran a very famous club, at least one club, I think.
One relevant.
Okay. He's also appeared many years ago on Chris Morris's Day Today, which some of you will remember was a very fantastic show that Amanda Iannucci was involved in as well. He's also been on MTV Europe. He's set up record labels, he's published books, and today he's done this fantastic festival. Please welcome Crispin, Diego and Camilo.
Well, I'm extremely honoured to be in such privileged company, and I was fortunate enough to meet these two fabulous creatures on a dance floor approximately 20 years ago in downtown Mexico City. Both of them were impeccably behaved at all times, and they have been incredibly generous with their time and their friendship, and have joined us today to celebrate this fabulous Day of the Dead festival and all that lies behind it. And I've been looking forward to this point throughout the past 9 months, because I get to sort of explain through you guys why I love your country so much, and that's an enduring love, and I've always found it quite hard to put into words, so it's up to you guys, but I kind of, you know, the fact that both of you have pushed your careers and your creativity in such fabulous expressions. I don't think these guys really need introductions. Diego making beautiful movies and Camilo making beautiful music, and that's as far as my introduction is going to go. But I'd like to just start off by asking, I arrived in Mexico in 1997. Well, what was it like growing up there before then? And what pushed you both into working with creativity? And how was that experience? I'd like to ask you that first.
All right. Hi everyone. Hi. Good to be here. It's so nice. If you didn't want to put it in words, I don't get why you organized this. You decided to go with that. I mean, basically, he did have the best club. Very legal, but you, in many ways. You said it, man. I mean, it's 20 years ago. I was 15, allowed to drink beer.
You were 15 then?
Yeah. Someone got this photo in front of him. It's the worst thing that could happen.
I'm gonna go.
If I asked my dad, at least he would say that you're the problem in my life.
Thank God he's not here.
But I have to say this is amazing. I just walking around this place, finding out that there is a connection with this island that didn't seem to exist years ago. I am half British. My cousin is here to prove it. He's very British, and I've always lived very disconnected, and this effort to actually connect us through art, through food, through the idea of dead, it's unbelievable. I think it's a great thing you're doing, so I'm glad to be part.
Thank you.
And yeah, I grew up in, I don't know, I call my generation, and I believe a few behind, the earthquake generation. You know, in '85 we had an earthquake in Mexico that destroyed Mexico City, and that shows how vulnerable we were, and suddenly that we had to work together, even though in Mexico we have all these class issues that are very marked, and well, we have now it's not the richest man in the planet, but it's number 2 or number 3. Well, we have one of the poorest countries of Latin America, tons of, I mean, the difference between those who have and those who don't is huge in our country. But after the earthquake, everyone had to work together, you know. We were all part of destruction. We all lost something close. And I think that was like I don't know, it shaped us as a generation. It allows to know that we were stronger if we worked together, that we were part of something bigger. And I think many things happened then. We had this party, which is called El PRI, P-R-I, and it's they basically were in the government for 70 years, you know. So there was one thing they call elections happening every 6 years, but it was like a monarchy somehow, you know. Another connection. They were always there.
It was like a math Game of Thrones.
Exactly.
Which one was the dwarf?
Hotel.
Okay, we'll get into that in a bit. But just going back to that earthquake, because I experienced a very minor terremoto, and I woke up one morning, went to the shower, was slightly hungover, and I felt the earth was shaking and just dismissed it, and then heard kind of noises coming from outside and ran outside. And in Mexico there's a breed of dog called the Cholotl, which is a hairless Mexican dog, and I had one of the loves of my life, and I ran downstairs with a towel and a shivering Cholotl, and literally the whole street turned around and laughed at me, which was like difficult to live with. But do you remember the '85 earthquake?
Yeah, I mean,
where were you? What?
I was in the shower.
As well?
Not with the shoulder screen, I wasn't that area. Exactly.
It's our destiny.
I was 6 years old, so I was thinking of other stuff. Still, you were not part of my world. But I remember, like, we used to react easy to earthquakes because they would happen every year, but this one just lasts longer. So there was a feeling of like, shit, this is never gonna end. And then actually everything started, like TV went off, you know, phones, nothing worked, and in the house everything started to fall. And it was very scary to open the door and go out, you know, because literally destruction was everywhere. And it took weeks, you know, to go back to normality. Everything had to stop. There's great stories of how people were found, but obviously those are the beautiful ones, but there were horrible stories going on. And it just suddenly, like, the other day I saw Juan Villoro, an amazing Mexican writer, saying that we just realized again how corruption and how basically we were cheated in the way the city was built. You know, suddenly we realized it was very fragile. And again, it's a reflection of your country, obviously. You know, everyone built saying, oh, we're using that kind of materials, and they were using the cheap. So we realized what we had.
Well,
it was us, you know.
My understanding was that it was possible to buy your degree in the 60s and 70s at university in Mexico, and my understanding was that the architecture degree was one of the most, it opened the most doors, and consequently there were students who didn't complete their studies who had degrees and therefore ended up building many of the edificios in Mexico City that came down. I mean, I don't know if how accurate that is, and you're allowed to smell bullshit.
Well, you can call me doctor.
Is there any truth in that, Camilo?
Yeah, of course. No, I mean, I guess what Diego was saying is totally right. Like that was the probably one of the awakenings, no? And it was a very important moment for our generation because we basically grew up in a really like in a period of time that everything was like either rebuilding or destroying. So it was a nice moment. At the same time, there was this whole generation of artists that they were supporting the government, like Gabriel Orozco, and so they were early on the early stages, and it was like you could feel there was a generation doing something interesting, and funny enough, with the government, like the government was supporting that. So it was nice to see that happening. Also in rock, believe it or not, and it sounds like we were in Cambodia or something like that, but believe it or not, there was no, rock was not allowed to be played in concerts. Like we had from the 60s until 85, 87, yep. Like there were no rock shows, basically. There were some kind of underground stuff happening, but it was just it was very underground. So for my generation, consuming rock was kind of a challenge. Like there were a few radio stations that played some kind of rock, and on 86 there was this big rock en español thing happening, and my brother at that time was later on we discovered it was a one-hit wonder, but at the moment he was a hit maker. So yeah, he had one. Sadly he wasn't one hit, but he was really good. He was like the Mexican Common in a way. So
can you sing a few parts?
Voy a buscar. Voy a buscar.
Hey!
So it was a very interesting moment, like 86, 88. We had like a really amazing rock scene that was growing up, and you keep seeing all these rock bands, like new wave bands, doing their thing. So even though we had the earthquake, there was some beauty of it. Like I always say that there's beauty in ugliness, and that was like a good example.
So when you started making music, that was in what, the early 90s?
Well, that moment I was 18, so I was not doing music, but I was consuming a lot of music. I started doing music later in my life. Like I took a job on the record industry, and I spent a lot of time like signing a lot of bands, like the one that is gonna play tonight, which is Zoe. And my story is funny. Like I did remixes for a bunch of friends, like Café Tacuba and everyone. And a label in Spain like told me like, hey, you should send us your stuff because it's very good. I sent them my demo, and they were like, you know what? Your demo sucks. Really, like I was, you should do more music. And I at that moment I had like a really bad computer, so I didn't have enough memory on my computer. So I couldn't make more music. So I was like, oh God, what am I gonna do? So I just wait a couple of weeks and change the order of the CD and send it back. And they listened to it and they were like, oh my God, this is amazing. And that's how I started.
That simple fact says so many terrible things about the music industry.
I know.
Well, thank God you're on the other side and are now making the music, as opposed to being the person who signs the bands, which I guess you still are as well, aren't you?
Yeah, I still have a label in Mexico signing a lot of cool music. I think there's so many that it's impossible for me not to do it.
So jumping forward a bit, when I got to Mexico, which was in 97, 98, I was on my way to Colombia, and I thought I wanted to write a film script there, and I wanted to do that in Medellin, and therefore I felt my Spanish had to be a little bit better than what it was at that point. So I stopped off in Mexico City, and Mexico City just blew my mind. It was like Blade Runner on acid. It was chaos and wonderful, and I received the warmest possible welcome, and I felt this incredible kind of bubbling up of creativity and really interesting people determined to do really interesting things. So was that what was going on around that time for you guys? What was actually going on a bit further? Because I think maybe I saw it slightly superficially.
No, I think you're right. In the 90s, things changed for good, I think. I believe we were living under certain kind of rules that suddenly in 88 we realized we could break, you know. In 88 there was this election that suddenly Free didn't won. It won the guy that had like 3% of time to advertise in TV. Like it really won a movement that was rooted in people talking and connecting and waking up somehow, you know.
Who was that?
Who was Cuauhtémoc Cárdenas. And then the election was stolen in front of everyone's eyes. But we realized it was possible. We realized something happened. I believe Free started to lose his, you know. Basically, it's a moment like, I don't know if you've seen like The Bicycle Thief, you know, when the little kid sees his father is stealing a bicycle, and you go like, oh, my dad is what? My hero is what? Basically, that happened around that time, you know. Suddenly we looked for our dad, and our dad was in TV stealing stuff and, you know, changing the boxes and getting people out of the, how do you say, the casillas, voting. Like we saw the military doing crazy shit on TV. Well, before they hide it, but then this time was obvious. And we all saw that, and eventually happened, you know. 2 elections later, they lost, and we got a new party in power, and things changed. And I call the country like a teenage country somehow, you know, because we are finding out who the fuck we are, basically, you know. We thought we knew everything, and we realized recently we know nothing. We're back with the PRI. You know, now this time they voted for them again, which is insane. Kind of Stockholm crisis or something like that. But anyway, there's things happening, and art is just always a reflection of that, you know. Art is like a mirror of reality. And you have these amazing voices coming out of Mexico at the moment, you know. And this obviously started happening in the 90s and 2000s, and it's younger people, at least in what I do, you know. Before in cinema, to be a director, you needed to have gray hair. You could now become one, yeah. You know, be a grandpa. You had to be the assistant of someone for 20 years that treated you like shit, and suddenly now you can treat someone like shit. And that was the cinema I grew up in, you know. You had your big cigars, and they were like, you know, this kind of like, oh, the director is coming, you know, you realize that. And now it's young people doing films, you know. They're not waiting or asking for permission. They're just going out and shooting and executing and getting a lot of attention out of Mexico, which makes them suddenly heroes in Mexico. And these stories are beautiful, you know. The story of the chef back there, you know, Olvera, is amazing. I mean, it happens so fast, and suddenly all these things are happening, and then there is a feeling of like, yeah, we thought we had boundaries that don't really exist, and I believe it's part of the same whole thing, you know.
I mean, I'm really looking forward to getting into what's going on now, and if you'll give me permission to slightly rein you in a bit and go back to then, and that kind of 97, 98 moment. So, you know, it felt like someone was flicking a collectively really large switch, and people were just changing up, and there felt like a real surge of independent thinking going on. And I'm interested that rock and roll had been banned because, you know, I think that in this country we have such a broad access to music and always have had that's, you know, we've kind of been slightly able to steal from everywhere and make our own sound as we go on. But what was going on musically at that point? You know, I was aware of some insanely good bands coming out, most of which you signed. So.
Well, I remember the very first concert, and you will laugh because there was almost a riot with Rod Stewart. It's painful, but I mean, it was what it is. Like the second one was like in excess, and it was like completely crazy. I don't know. I mean, it seems like it was a sign of the times because also at that time, later on, like year, like 1992, they opened the first McDonald's in Mexico. And there were like lines for people trying to get like the box. They didn't care about the burger. Just to give the kids the lunch box for the school. So every kid came with the McDonald's box. And it was like a status thing. It was like middle classer to have bring your own McDonald's box. It's really, I mean, when you tell it, it's actually pretty sad. But it was cool at that moment. And I guess musically, it was interesting because I guess that generation that didn't have concert, they do consume a lot of stuff. Like all this generation listen to the Clash, to like Iron Femmes. So all these bands that were listening to punk rock and new wave, they discover, like we have Mexican music and it's actually pretty cool. We love Perez Prado and we love Agustin Lara. So this generation started creating music with one feet on like punk rock and the other feet with Mexican music. That's why the many bands like just suddenly appear, like Café Tacuba or Maldita Vecindad, which are legendary. Like, if you haven't listened to them, try it because they're amazing. Like they are the perfect like picture of what like the two sides we have as Mexican. You know? Like we have a very deep influence by Americans, but at the same time we love our culture. And I think the next generation, which is my generation, we listen to Kraftwerk and to De La Soul and to Primal Scream and that kind of stuff. So we did electronic music with Mexican music. So, and that's how Nortec and Northeast band exists. That basically they are the next step of what it was happening. But I think over the years we have managed to create our own identity, and it's a very healthy scene, as Diego said, like in cinema, with all this generation, like we start creating stuff, and suddenly it starts to happen. Like you could see like people doing good, like and crossing the border and doing stuff. So I mean, these years has been very exciting because you can see like this rotation of new people coming in and succeeding. You know?
So when I got to Mexico, I generally, and that's 99.9% of the time, was afforded an extraordinary open-armed welcome that was just, there's never been repeated anywhere else. On maybe one occasion, I remember walking down the street and saying, "Pinche gringo." And I actually turned around and corrected them and said, "Es que no soy gringo, soy inglés." And I'm really interested in if you could sort of break down a bit the relationship between America and Mexico, because it was so palpable, even in Mexico City.
It's a difficult one. He has a concert at 9, and it's a long conversation. You kind of talk about. It's basically the most complicated thing. It's like the biggest border between the third and the first world in the planet, you know. And how can these two very different worlds coexist and complement each other, you know? I heard once that if you go to Tijuana, you understand the issue of migration of the whole planet. You know, you can just go study there, and you'll get it, because it's insane. You know, that just that little piece of the border gets close to 2 million people crossing every day, and it's crazy. And the relation with the States is the big reference in many ways. You know, there's also a status thing, like when you have a connection to the States. You know, you're closer to God somehow.
What's the saying?
Well, there's one, tan lejos de Dios y tan cerca de los United States, like, fuck. It's like, shit. But at the same time, I have to say, it changes and it affects the country beautifully. If you travel from the south to the north, you feel the influences. You know, you go to California, to Sonora, and the connection to the States and to something very vibrant of the culture of the States, and this idea of reinventing yourself over and over, it has affected those areas. You know, if you go Norte, for example, it's a great example of that connection. They're in Tijuana, and their music is unbelievable, and it's impossible to put it in a box of like, oh well, they belong to this. You know, and but then you travel south, and the connection to the indigenous world is much stronger. You know, you go to the north, and guys are huge and blonde, and you know, they eat meat, and they're gigantic and strong. And you go down, and the race changes dramatically, the accents. It's a very rich country and very spread country. You know, we're very wide, and I think, for good and bad, it defines us a lot, you know, and it defines us, and it makes us very different to many of the other countries of Latin America, you know. We tend to commit the big mistake of trying to belong, you know, over and over. But at the same time, there's voices that go completely against, you know, and that are very, very, very exciting, you know.
And that's really what I encountered when I got there. So musically, you know, Molotov and Control Machete, and you guys were just sort of pushing out, and there was actually, to me, as an outsider, I really felt that it was very sui generis. It was you guys really creating an identity, and that's what sort of made me stick around for 10 years. Is I wanted
that and other things. I remember. The audience.
Got me there. We can talk about that. But yeah, no, I just watched it unfold, and then in 2005 I left, and between 2005 I've come back a few times, but there have been some really, really quite profound changes that I've noticed. And actually, one of the things that got me into the idea of working with Oaxaca to represent, you know, what's going on in Mexico and the UK at the moment was Camilo. Someone sent me one of Camilo's videos, which kind of looked like an alternative national anthem and a cry of pain, and it really hit me quite profoundly. And with your permission, I'd like to play it if you guys are all right with that. And maybe you could expand on it and break down some of the lyrics.
I can do like the Beavis and Butthead version.
Oh, okay.
That's cool.
I'm looking forward to that. Let's see if technology can take us there.
Todos somos víctimas de un estado conquistado. con la población herida. México, 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 es México, México, ra, ra, ra. Son los Zetas o es el Chapo, tus hijos ya son sicarios. Muérdete en la lengua que hay 30 muertos en Veracruz. Es todo un placer y orgullo saber que el turno es tuyo. Que quizás mañana ya no llegues vivo a tu casa. México, 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 es México. México, ra, ra, ra. México, 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 es México, México, ra, ra, ra. Verde de mota, blanco de coca y rojo tu sangre. Estado fallido, campeón. Orgullosos patios traseros, al sonoro rugir del cañón, y se siembre con tus manos la hierba, al sonoro rugir del cañón, y se siembre con tus manos la hierba, al sonoro rugir del cañón. México.
For me, what impacts me about that is every single Mexican I've ever met in my life shares one common thread, which is they are so proud to be Mexican, and that's just a constant presence. So what's, to be able to make a song like that, which maybe you could break down some of the lyrics, but I think it's a really brave thing to be saying, and it shows tremendous courage to be making a song like that.
Yeah, well, these the people with the flags are the families, relatives of the kids that died at the guardería ABC, the kindergarten that was. It was guardería, like a pre-K kind of thing, pre-kinder, that died, and so far they haven't got any support from the government. So we Jonas Cuaron, the guy who did the video, and Carlos Cuaron, the brother of Alfonso, they helped me putting together this video, and we team up with them just to instead of doing a video and with a song like this, I think it was better like a flyer. At this moment we had elections, so it was very important to do something like strong and try to affect the elections and let people think, which obviously we failed. But okay, well, that's life. And then the lyrics is like it's kind of Mexican thing, like we laugh at death, we laugh at horrible things, and in a way I laugh at this. Like there was this porra, this cheerleaders that says like Mexico, Mexico, ra ra ra, and this is the song that says like Mexico, ra ra ra, like in a horrible situation, being the back door of America, the place where you can like get all the guns and all the drugs, to ship it to the States and provide them with drugs. And this kind of thing. That's why in one part I use the national anthem as saying like that we're a total corrupt country. So that's it. I haven't seen this video in a while, and
it's amazing.
It took me a while to see it again because it's really shocking and it's very strong. But in a way, it was really important to at that moment to do something like a wake-up call.
I thought it was amazing. Now I've been signalled by the delightful Joe and Kat from English Pen. I'd really like you to give a round of applause to for organising all of this amazing thing. And we have little time left, but I wondered if anyone wanted to ask any questions, because I could keep wibbling to you all night long, but obviously you're doing your thing, which is we will be toasting Mexico throughout the evening with mezcal, and we will be doing our thing. Are there any questions? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Alma. I'm from California and New Mexico, so Mexico is close to my heart, and I was the kid who always grew up wanting to be Mexican, which is kind of funny for an American. I've spent a lot of time in Mexico, and I've seen Chiapas and indigenous communities. I've met your president, your former president, so I've seen the disparity. But I've also seen how, on one hand, Mexico looks to the north, but at the same time, how increasingly there's influence from the south, especially as there are fewer opportunities in the States. So flows of migration reversing. So I was wondering if you could just talk about the unique position that Mexico has, not just in looking to the north, but the influence from the south. And then one second question is just about the importance of art and popular artists like yourself in bringing political issues to light. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna start with the second one and then go back to the first, probably, or share it. But I think we got to a point where it's not a responsibility as an artist, it's a responsibility as a citizen, you know? And it's a responsibility that we all share, which is basically get involved with the reality we live in, you know, and question ourselves every day if we are where we want to be, and if not, do something about it, you know. Art, it's a fantastic way to get it out, to vomit all those things that you can't keep inside, you know, and it's becoming easier and easier to be an artist in Mexico because there's so much to vomit. There is a lot happening, and we're at the same time loving a country, living in the place you don't wanna be far from. We see and we can't deny that we are part of something also horrible, a horrible beast that is part of us, you know, that we've created, that we've fed all through the years, and that now we have to fight somehow, you know. I see this video and I want to cry. It's like ridiculous. It's so strong, and it's because I see myself there, not because I'm sad for those who are there, for those who are carrying a picture. It's because I see myself so close to be the one carrying a picture, because I want to get affected by the story of others, you know, before it has to happen to me somehow. So Mexico is going through like a thing they don't want to call the war, but it's definitely a war, you know. The official numbers of the people that have been killed in the last, so it's 10 years, is close to 150,000, you know. Imagine the scar, the wound that leaves open, you know. Multiply that for the amount of family members, friends those people have. That is the country we live in, and that's not stopping at all. And media is allowing us to to know the stories, you know, how things have changed with these things in 10 years. Stories.
Sorry.
A big change. Carry on, this is amazing.
So 10 years ago we had to wait. I remember in the 90s there was a thing called Canal 2 de Julio. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And it was like they would do the news in a VHS when the Chiapas guerrilla started in 1994. You would watch the news and there would be lovely news about the lovely Mexico, about the World Cup in the States going on in 94, how good we were gonna do. And there was the first guerrilla happening, and a guerrilla that wasn't shooting bullets, that was using words to kind of connect and to change things. And while that was happening, the only way to get information was to wait for these tapes to be distributed, obviously just in Mexico City and a few other places. And you would watch on a Monday the news of all last week, you know. That was how fast you could react. Today the stories get to you in 30 seconds, you know. And we're witnessing this war with an easy access to it. Obviously, that brings such a vibrant voice in art out. But it's everywhere. Then you go to a march and you realize it's not just the artist, we are just part of something bigger. There's a football match going on, and when the minute 43 happens, everyone shouts 43 for the 43 students that were killed recently in Mexico. And this is football fans, and it's happening everywhere. So it's kind of exciting to be part of that. It's so sad sometimes. It's so uplifting others. It's just like a roller coaster, you know. It's like we're living under this influence of this drug that takes you like up and down because of war on drugs, of a market that is not ours, you know. So it's a very complicated situation, and that's why art today is so rich and diverse and unique and special. And it's not going to stay there, you know. It's going to travel, and it's going to get to the UK, and it's going to be out there, and it's going to be everywhere, and nothing can stop that.
You at the front.
Hi there. I was just thinking what you're talking about there in relation to this war, which I'm sure we all realise is actually a war related to drugs. And what perhaps we don't realise here in the UK is that we're actually funding a war in Mexico here from the UK. Regularly, we spend £10.7 billion a year, which we put into the narco trade in Mexico by our use of drugs. Or perhaps not so much by our use of drugs, but by the legal status of drugs in this country, so that's what we're killing those 150,000 people in your country right now. And strangely, it doesn't really get in the news so much. We don't really realise, but we're getting the happy part of the news here. You know, we go out there, we see the lovely food, we're having a great time here, and we have the happy part of the news here. Do you have a feeling about that? I mean, does it make you annoyed, or as an artist, especially when you come to this country?
I mean, if you put that video outside, it would be like this madam or the Banksy place. I mean, what is important for us now, and I don't know if that was your question, but I think the only way to fight that, because we're not going to stop people using drugs, and I mean, it's good to have this conscience, but the only thing that we can do as a society is just be really strong and be together and support each other and do interesting stuff. Art is a very important issue, like also to change the vision of Mexico. Mexico is not that. Mexico is more like the Mexico I like is the Mexico of the creators and the interesting people and the ideas and and all this society that's creating stuff. So I think it's very important to fight drugs and fight violence and fight corruption with positive and really smart things and solid concepts and unity. I think that's, for me, my action plan as a citizen. Otherwise, we end up being that. And I don't want, this is really deep. It's going to take us decades to go out. So through our food and through our music and through our theater and movies, and we will change little by little. And we will suddenly be like, oh, this is not the country full of crooks and dealers. It's a country full of creative people.
Lovely. One last one. We've got time.
Let me just add one thing to that. I think it's about information. The lack of actual information that matters about that celebrates death. Like now, if it can be said in 140 characters, it's definitely not a reflection of truth. You have to avoid that kind of information, and definitely there's so many connections that the reality over there has to this country, to Europe, obviously to the States. That it's not until we all understand that we share a world that belongs to all of us, and that whatever we do over there affects reality somewhere else. Things are not going to change. And again, I believe, like Camilo is saying, that art can trigger that connection. Art can trigger that. When you see a film, there's like a specific, very simple story that belongs to a context, but you can learn so much of you by watching someone so different to you. And that's the beauty of what we do. Somehow telling this story just relieves me badly, but then it can affect others in many ways I'm not controlling anymore. Like here, this gentleman here, he suggests I read the last Saviano's book that talks about exactly what you were saying. This idea of in Mexico they're killing each other for a war we are supporting. We are the head of that of that war. And he's talking about the UK and how the money laundering of the UK allows all of this to happen. Very interesting book to find those connections that suddenly you miss or you forget they exist. And it's nice to feel those connections, because then there is a chance of doing something together and becoming part of something bigger and stronger, and leaving just a better place for our kids.
Sounds great. Round of applause. Actually, we've got time for one last two questions. One. Mexicana.
¿Ustedes creen que sí se va a arreglar lo de México, lo que está pasando ahorita?
The translation of that. Do you think that things are gonna get sorted out? What's going on in Mexico?
But okay.
We play with 8 balls. Eventually, it will take. Diego said something really interesting. The wound is there, so it will take a lot of education, a new generation, a different government, a controlled or a new rethinking on how to approach to drugs and how government should react. I mean, there are so many variables. I would say it will not fix at all. It will not fix completely, but it will fix little by little and by tiny actions that can at least make more decent. But that, I don't know how long, probably it's 2,000 years. We can make it.
Yeah, it's a difficult one.
Yeah.
It's I would stay for the next round of talk and ask. Ahí lo veo sentado, ahí está acolchado. He might have a better answer to that. What I think has to change is the way we relate to it, you know, and that is beautiful. Like today we stop seeing ourselves as the victims and more as part of a problem. The better and the easier we can actually fix our reality. And it starts in your house. It starts with your day by day, you know. It starts in the way you talk to your kids. It starts in, it's like part of us.
Lovely answers. Well,
that's it. Are we gonna finish in such a dark
I'm getting sort of wind up.
Can we get one more about
we have one
something
more?
fun and
I think this gentleman
related to
who's been
mezcal or something?
Yeah, exactly.
Or the movies,
Yeah.
or sex, or something.
There's lots of sex questions, but I'm not going to be
Is there
asking.
like there's a place to go and have sex here, or you have?
I would encourage it wherever you feel the urge.
So there's no
It
restriction.
would be necrophilia, no?
That's in the basement, and obviously that can be done in the privacy of your own Mexican wrestling stadium. But
The wrestling is a good way. I mean, it can get you there somehow. I saw them right now.
I know, I saw you getting a bit excited about that. Little beads of sweat appearing and that maniacal grin across the face. Well, if anyone would care to watch Diego Luna having sex on the wrestling stage, it may well happen down the line.
Sorry.
Hello, well, I'm from Mexico. I come from, well, I was born in a very small city in the center of Mexico. So my question is related to all the problems that we're having in Mexico and how to solve them. But in my personal point of view, I think, as Camilo said, education is kind of like the key in order to get people educated and to digest all this information that we get from the internet, from the news. So art is also like a very good way of awakening people, but how to get like Mexico in general, like do you think that's the solution? Like education is the solution, but middle class people in Mexico get education, but in very small towns, then it's very hard to get access to education for them, for example. So if that's the solution, how to ask education for everyone in Mexico?
It's like Camilo is saying, not just one thing needs to change, it's everything. You know, Mexico is a country that in Latin America that spends the most amount of money in education. The problem is it's not spent in actually educating people. You know, it goes in the system of corruption. Once the money gets to the actual place where it has to go, it's already so thin, you know, compared to how it started. So many things have to change in Mexico in order to deliver things like that. But we have the richness and we have the strength, and if we get involved, we will have the numbers also to make those changes happen, you know. And there's no way you don't get affected by the reality you live in, you know. There's no way that someone can shut your eyes to what's happening. So reality is waking us up, you know. And there's no way to avoid that, and that's going to have a reaction somehow, and it's happening. It's happening, and it's cooking, and you can feel it. And but how is that going to turn? What is that going to become? I don't know.
Diego Luna, Camilo Lara, I love you con pasión gitana. Thank you so much for talking with us all today. It's been a real pleasure, and thank you guys for accompanying us and being here. It's a real honor.
Very much, Crispin, Diego, and Camilo. Please, if you want to carry on this really important conversation, as Diego mentioned, we have 3 very remarkable Mexican journalists coming up in a quarter of an hour at 5:15. Alfredo Colchado, Joan Grillo, and Sandra Rodriguez Nieto talking. They are all on the front line of the drugs war in Mexico.
That's the real one. Yeah. If you want to make those questions, they're the people.
Please, can I ask you all also just to leave out to the back door, but I hope you'll come back in 50 minutes for a really fascinating discussion. And then at 6:30 for Thomasina Myers, who is another genius behind this amazing festival. Thank you.